so great to be here. And absolutely, the AEC Hackathon is near and dear to my heart, as well as knowing you, Damon. You know, a lot of people might not know this about me, but actually, I am a fourth generation construction, family member. So my father, my grandfather, my great grandfather were all builders. And, so as a kid, I spent most of my childhood with my dad being a GC and doing remodels, and us always having different kinds of trucks and, specially talented individuals coming over to our house and construction workers and all that. So, absolutely. So I'm glad to be here. I just wanted to share some slides with you. And so give me just a moment to tee that up. Let's see here. Let's just go and share the desktop. And let's see if I can get over to this. Okay, so I think everybody can see my screen, and so what I want to talk about today, and it's great that Matterport is one of the sponsors, because actually I've been working with Matterport for a very long time and with their technology, and what I'm going to talk about today is sort of enabling virtual tours in the age of COVID and what this means, and we're going to talk a little bit about how I got here and what I've been doing the last few months. So it's really just more of a show and tell about the last several months and how things have been going for people that are trying to share, a space, whatever that means. So let's see. So a little bit more about me. I am the founder and chief photographer at a company called Hopscotch Interactive, which I started in 2015. I initially started this to help sell a property for my mother-in-law. It was no intention really of becoming a business, but I had my hands on a Matterport camera, and so I used that in order to help promote this property that we were selling, and that turned into just, a lot of demand from realtors in the area who said, do you do this as a business? Is this something that you do? And I really launched, scanning and photography and real estate marketing from that experience it was over 5 years ago now. I'm also the executive chairman of a company called Spatial First, where we use all of the amazing 3D assets, 3D maps, 3D content, additional content, and we put that together into a spatial interface to take all of this amazing 3D content to the next level as a way to interact with properties beyond just a tour. I also am the PropTech chair of the Commercial Real Estate Professionals Network in San Francisco, also known as CREPIN. And that's great because I work with a lot of industry professionals in the commercial real estate sector in particular. And I also support well-known industry events, RealCom, which is a large event for commercial real estate and corporate real estate, and their CoreTech technology conference, sharing with them all of my expertise about extended reality and reality capture. I also volunteer for XR Marin and their Leadership Council, which is bringing XR initiatives to schools to help the next generation learn about XR and what it can do for their careers and potential future careers. And I also volunteer for the AWE All-Night San Francisco event and meetup, and I'm on the AWE Advisory Council. So I'm very passionate about XR. I'm very passionate about real estate marketing and the next generation of what we can do with all of these incredible tools that we now have and the incredible technology. So here I am a few years ago. This is me with the Matterport camera. This was very early on. I just want to make sure that I can let you guys know, if you don't already know, what Matterport is briefly. This is a camera which has an infrared scanner in it, which captures the depth and geometry of a space. And then we build a map manually by placing the camera in different locations. It's assisted by GPS, it's assisted by photogrammetry now in the later versions of the Capture app. And so from that, we're able to build 3D models such as this, And this includes the 360 photographs, which are typically used for marketing, but also the underlying mesh and 3D data that then creates this dollhouse view or an interactive way for us to jump in and out of the model, really based on game mechanics of, you know, putting 3D content into Unity and into a game engine. So as many of you know, once you have 3D content in a game engine, then really you can do anything. So that's really where this all comes down to, is the interconnectedness of creating marketing content, but then what else we can do with it. This is just early on me showing VR, you know, to people. I was so excited about this sort of end-to-end solution for 360 and 3D to be viewable in VR, and I was one of the very earliest adopters of using this technology to bring VR to people and to share with them places that they normally wouldn't be able to visit, or maybe they couldn't travel to. But 5 years ago, obviously there were a lot of people that knew this was coming and was important, but they didn't really, I don't think we could have envisioned a time like we have now, where it is an unprecedented time where we need to have this. So in 2015, everybody said, you know, how necessary is it? What does it enable? And it really wasn't that, you know, it really wasn't something that everybody thought that they had to have. It was more of like a nice to have. And certainly there were pioneers that felt like, okay, well, I want to be on the cutting edge and I want to use this, whether it's Matterport, whether it's 360, whether it's some sort of render for the unbuilt environment. I would say that you know, unless you were talking about a developer who has no other way of showing a place or showing the vision of a place, and they would be willing to spend a lot of money for architects or for artists to create a rendering, showcasing the built environment was still really the domain of, you know, Faro systems or other types of scanning and laser scanning devices that were cost prohibitive, and certainly not something that everybody would be able to use, for instance, with their cell phone in order to create virtual tours and 360 content. It was getting there, but it was not something that was as ubiquitous as it is now. And in fact, because, and I worked a lot with commercial real estate, and specifically like in 2018, even a very large survey conducted by Build Out sort of, you know, came to the conclusion that VR and 3D tours and all of these things are sort of the bottom of the list of new technologies that they were going to be investing in and that they were going to be deploying in the coming year. And so you can see VR, I've circled it, VR and 3D are down at 13%. So like 1 in 10 thought that they would be using this, or even felt like they wanted to invest in it. And they put everything else way, way, way above that. Now, as we all know, fast forward to 2020 and all bets are off. It's a new world, and so what's been interesting is kind of how things have radically changed in a very short amount of time. And I think that that's the sort of the understatement of the year. You know, it's completely uncharted territory. But just to put some of this stuff into perspective, I just did a very brief LinkedIn survey last month asking people in my network, you know, were virtual tours for real estate already essential to your marketing strategy prior to COVID-19? And it was sort of like, okay, yes, they had already been essential, 18%, maybe that's a little uptick from 2018 where people said, you know, 12, 13% thought it was essential. But the overwhelming response, now 73% saying it doesn't matter what happened before, 73% are saying this is now essential. This is now absolutely something I have to have. And so now it's 7 out of 10 or more saying I have to have this. So what does that mean? And what did that look like over the last few months as everything radically shifted? So for us, and for my business, it meant that residential real estate, which had been the bulk of what I was doing in the last couple years, shifted dramatically. And commercial real estate and commercial office scanning in particular, you know, maybe in 2019 I scanned 100,000 square feet, just a rough estimate. This, in the last couple months, we've scanned approximately 750,000 square feet. We will be approaching 1 million square feet by the end of the summer. And we've seen a roughly 3 to 4 times demand for scanning increase. And this is not just scanning, but it's just all documentation, any kind of virtual tour. But the thing that's interesting about that, and especially for the hackathon audience and for people who have, you know, the ability to do more with this content, it means that there are, you know, at least 3 to 4 times the amount of scan data and OBJ data that is captured and is now a potential to use for XR. And one of the other things is that in this age of COVID, you know, we were all sheltering in place. Everyone has been sheltering in place in California and around the world. But interestingly enough, how were we even able to scan 1 million square feet this summer? And the way that we're able to do that is that real estate was classified actually as an essential service at the end of March. So not so late into the shelter in place and the quarantine stay-at-home instructions, we were informed, you know, and we all still had to make a decision about what we wanted to do, but we were informed that realtors were then classified as an essential service by the governor at the end of March. And then specifically real estate photography was classified as an essential service on April 10th. So what that meant was that we were in a very long period of a gray area, several weeks where we didn't know what was going on. I was watching this very closely, you know, and trying to figure out, well, how are we going to do this? Can there be staging? Can we enter a space? What are we able to walk into it? You know, what is COVID actually? I mean, if you look back a few months ago, none of us really knew. And so then came the let's cover our asses. Let's, you know, how are we gonna actually approach this new paradigm for ourselves? And on the left here, this has probably since been updated, but this is, for instance, the Coronavirus Property Entry Advisory and Declaration. So the legal and the ethical questions that came up around, you know, can you come into my property? Who can come into my property? What do I have to sign to be able to do this? It brought up a lot. And I think that what you're looking at here now with a little bit of hindsight, just for me, this was massive amounts of stress for everyone in the industry. And it really put a huge strain on professionals that were trying to help their clients and who wanted to enable transactions in some way. But, you know, was the piece of paper going to do it? Was having people that would be willing to go into spaces going to do it? Will we need robots to do it? I mean, we had all these questions. And then on the right, of course, is, you know, what Hopscotch Interactive had to do, which was try to comply with our, you know, those guidelines, and then come up with our own, you know, what are the things that we can do to keep our employees safe, to keep ourselves safe, and to keep a safe environment, knowing that virtual tours and knowing that documentation of spaces is the only way in some cases that people will be able to continue to transact. It was very much like life stopped in the middle of March for most of the commercial buildings across the country and around the world. So that really was a massive amount of stress for us to try to navigate. What do we do next? How do we do this? But we have been able to overcome those early challenges, one, by implementing procedures and policies, two, by having a very open dialogue with our clients about what we can do and what we can't do. And so it sort of enabled us to get back to consulting with them and saying, okay, well, the more fundamental question is, if the built environment tells a story, you know, what story do we want to tell with it, knowing that we're now going to be going in and doing lots and lots of documentation. And this is where, for me, it became very much about my 3D philosophy, and this is very much influenced by the work that I've been doing for the 5+ years that I have been doing 3D scanning, and I've been doing real estate marketing, trying to enable XR for this industry and to leverage that technology. So everybody, I believe, who is, you know, involved in the AEC Hackathon understands that fundamentally 3D is sort of the basis for everything else that we can accomplish together. And so when it comes to real estate and to the built environment, it's no different. So the documentation in 3D enables us to create turnkey VR and AR experiences, but it also enables us to have a greater context for what is it that I'm trying to convey about a property or about a location, and about the information that is contained in that property that I need to communicate to somebody else. So just a quick example from residential, just to show you sort of the zoom effect. If I'm looking at the banister and I see it's a lovely staircase, it's a beautiful marketing photo. It tells me that this is a well-kept place, that it is a lovely staircase with craftsmanship and a very nice color palette, and I love it. It's great. But if I zoom out a little bit, now I can see that I am able to really, get more information. If I go further, I get even more information. If I jump even further out, well, then there's more data, there's more information available to me. And I think that 3D scanning and what we are doing when we're going in and we're creating a full documentation of a space is that we take it to the next level of immersion, such that it's not a question of, oh, this is the pretty picture that a photographer just happened to take in order to entice me to come to a property. In fact, it's really the opposite. It's that I want you to see every facet of this environment so that you can make an informed decision whether or not there's a hole in the ceiling. That's actually a punch list item, so I need that information. And I think that that's one of the things that has radically shifted in the last few months, is that folks realize that, yes, the marketing photos are going to sell it and they're going to get people excited about a property, but they can't make a decision from afar if they don't have all the information. And so this is just a photograph from us in the field. I think this was in May, shooting in San Francisco, being part of this, what I consider to be a real essential workforce, gearing up and, being a proxy for the rest of the folks in the industry that want transactions to be enabled, but they can't travel to these places. So, we went in and have been going in and documenting in empty spaces and in empty office buildings, office suites, of which currently there are still quite a lot. So here, for example, is a lobby of a place in San Francisco that we shot. And I just wanted to also say, one of the other things that was again happening in the last couple months is that this building, I shot this building sort of mid-May, and 2 weeks later, we were, and I'll just go forward a little bit here. 2 weeks later, every building in San Francisco looked like this. It had been boarded up and had, all of the windows covered, and it made it impossible for us to shoot with any kind. I'll go back. It made it impossible for us to get what would have been a marketing image because the buildings were completely covered, and we didn't know how long that was going to be in place. So the companies and the clients of mine that had invested in doing the 3D really benefited from us being able even during shelter in place, and then later during the protests, for us to be able to go in and continue to make scans and to keep things going for the business, because we had invested that time in documenting some of these properties. And so I'm going to go a little bit further. These are some examples of 3D tours, and I'll load one of these in a second, but both from the tenant fit out, existing space, and then even something that is in shell and core condition, shell space. This helps the clients, my clients, the commercial brokers, share with somebody, a potential tenant, exactly what the space looks like and where it's at in construction. And then we can also use this to create other 3D visualizations so that we help them get to market faster. Just a little bit more about the 3D and what we capture. The underlying OBJs, if it's a built-out space, it's pretty rough. This was not scanned specifically for 3D, so we can do better than this. But even still, It allows us to have a really rough guide for using this to do other visualizations and to do virtual staging or to do a virtual fit out. And so this is one example, just also overlaid with what it actually looked like in the space. So just back and forth, you can see that it's a pretty good level of detail considering it's a less expensive 3D scanning device in order to capture something of this fidelity. And again, this is also a space. It's a vacant space, so it's not shell and core. It's second generation office space. But this is what it looks like with photograph, and this is what it looks like in a 3D scan. So this is really a blank canvas for us to do other things with it. For example, I have a client in San Francisco who had a giant hole in the wall, and so I partnered with a company called Geopogo, and we put together an AR visualization of the kitchen remodel, which is still months out, and also and has an unknown finishing or timeline to be finished because of all of the delays and shelter in place. And so using the photographs, using the 3D, using everything that we have as an asset for this space, we're able to then have a very high fidelity sort of mixed reality AR component to a leasing offering. And this is and at a very decent price. So this is really helpful for our customers who don't even know what augmented reality is, to be honest, most of the time, but they know that they are able to use these tools, and they're actually needing them for the first time as more of a need and rather than as like a nice to have. For instance, here is another application of this technology. This is just an aerial video of a site in the South Bay. This is 4 large industrial warehouses under construction. And again, with shelter in place, we had, this is a Cushman and Wakefield represented property, Morton Commerce Center. And, utilizing a combination of media, drone media, reality capture, 360, and et cetera, we have been able to now document to a significant degree such that we can have a virtual tour even for a extremely large industrial complex and not just a small office, and using our technology to sort of curate enough information and create a tour for somebody that they can visit it remotely. And there's a lot of different ways to do that, but certainly I think that the underlying philosophy that I have really has to do with this full documentation. So what 3D enables, again, documentation and timestamping, augmented reality, extended reality, virtual reality. We are getting into the realm of creating a property's first digital twin, but likely not its last. So right now, these are like pieces of a puzzle that haven't yet been fit together into any full picture. And so we have lots of 3D content, lots of 3D spaces, but we haven't wrapped it all up into a picture at any giantly scalable way that brings it all together. But I do know that that's coming, and that's also some of the stuff that I've been working on with my company Spatial First. The 3D enables mapping, storytelling, marketing, and it is the foundational technology. The scanning technology and the 3D visualization is a foundational technology for the era of spatial computing, which we don't have a lot of time to get into today, but certainly is where we are heading, where we are able to visualize augmented content in the world around us, and we are able to access that based on our location. So if we've scanned and if we've mapped a place, then we should be able to call up content based on where we are, or show content based on where we are, and our devices will know exactly where we are and show us that content. So to pull it back to what I showed you earlier, I should be able to walk into that suite that has the kitchen under construction, and my phone should be able to my mobile device should let me know, or my wearable should let me know that there's content here for me to see and to show me a visualization. So really the takeaway for me is that, what story the built environment tells a story, but what story do we want to tell? Well, if you have invested in and spent the time and energy in the documentation, I think that the great news is that really this allows us to tell any story that we want. So that is where I will leave it, and hopefully there'll be some questions, but just a couple more ideas and food for thought. My 2020 outlook is that I do believe that reality capture will spread into new verticals. We've just gone halfway through phase 1 of a very large scanning project for a campus, and I think that will continue. I think because schools are closed and because COVID has impacted education in such a significant way, that there will be increased demand for reality capture, scanning, documentation of these types of places in particular, schools, venues, event spaces. I'd like to add retail to that list. And as I saw my own 400% growth in Q2, I don't see that slowing down. I think that the year just shifted for all of us, and so we're seeing we're seeing a spring market in late summer. We're going to see our summer market in the fall, and so it's just going to be a very different year for everyone. I think also that the marketplaces and portals that allow us to share these share the 3D content, share the assets, are still very much in their infancy, and so you'll see a lot more great things, I believe, from Zillow, from VTS, from companies like Truss, which are marketplaces for showcasing commercial real estate and residential real estate. And I think that workplace re-envisioning, so back to work schemes and workplace re-envisioning, is going to be the bulk of what will be done after we've documented and after we've sort of taken inventory on where we're at. I think that this is the work that's being done now, is everybody's trying to get a handle on, well, how do I even get back to work? What does that look like? How many people can stand in an elevator? I can tell you many stories about what that's been like the last few months, but I do think that getting back to work and then enabling remote office operations are top of mind for everyone I work with. And I do think that, my fingers are crossed, but I think it looks good that XR enablement is really getting there, because now we have less expensive, better access to 3D point clouds, and it's just the ability to capture this content and share it quickly and efficiently has really, I think, hit its inflection point. So yeah, so thank you. That is my chat for today, and I hope that it's been some good food for thought, and I welcome any questions, or if anybody wants to reach out to me, please feel free.